Hey guys, it's your boy 14 Fluffies here. I am finally back after, well, I don't know, like a month of not uploading, but yeah. So yesterday there was a new ban list. It was pretty hype for me seeing it for the first time, and it's just like, yay, Cosmos are hit. They're still going to be pretty viable in my opinion, but still, it's just Dark Destroyer to 1 made me really happy to see. But as you can tell from the Comanche Fortress Dragon and the Cyber Dragon in my main, extra, and side deck respectively, I'm still citing pretty heavily for the matchup, but you'll see when I actually get to the extra and side deck. So yeah, without further ado, let's just get into the main deck real quick. Starting off, we have the obligatory triple Shadow Mist. It searches your change quick plays and your heroes. Nothing really much to say about that. 2 copies of Blaze Man. Searches out your polys, and it lets you foolish any elemental hero into the graveyard. Normally Shadow Mist, but it can pretty much be any hero at any given point in time, so it's incredibly versatile, and I always play it as a 2-of, and I highly recommend playing it. So, yeah, come next up, 2 copies of Elemental Hero Bubble Man. Obviously, this guy lets you make your big XC plays. As long as you have no cards in your hands, you could just special summon him. And he's always a card that'll be used standard in multiples. I don't necessarily like him at 3, but normally the typical Master Hero philosophy is that you always play 3, just so you always have the maximum number of search targets for Shadow Mist. But because I play Blaze Man, I always have other search targets for Shadow Mist other than Bubble Man. And lastly, for the last hero, we are playing the one Neos Alias. I finally brought him back into the main deck. I think he's still really good. Obviously, the main reason I put him back a while was because of Cleavefort Demise and just having a normal summon that beats over all the Cleaves, but now that deck is less relevant, I'd say I don't know why it just dropped off for no reason. I still think it's a really good deck, but I still feel like it's still something that's good enough to play in the main deck as a 1-of, just because it helps you make Koga, and it puts a lot of damage on, and it's a very big normal summon, and it's just very appealing to me to have that. Next, 2 Summoner Monk. Obviously, you just pitch a spell and get a level 4 monster from deck. One really simple play that a lot of people don't necessarily know is that you can go Monk into Shadow Mist, and that's Dark Flower Flasia. So yeah, that's a thing. And for the last monster, we are running D1 Goblinberg. Obviously, this just lets you special summon Shadow Mist from hand. And that wraps up the monster lineup at 11. Very solid monster lineup in my opinion. I'm very happy with it, and I don't think I would change it outside of Stratos coming back, in which case I just dropped the Neos Alias for Stratos. On to the spells. We got 3 copies of A Hero Lives. This is pretty self-explanatory. It just pay half life points, special summon Shadow Mist from deck. It's a 1-card Dark Law, and it's something that heroes should be playing. I mean, I haven't been playing it for the longest time and saw pretty decent success with it, but now that I am running it, I'm just seeing much more success with the deck now. So much more consistency. It's just an instant consistent card, especially considering how you're playing 3, so you're seeing it as much as possible. Just to note, I am not playing Pot of Desires in this deck. It's just like it's $50 right now. Fuck that shit. So yeah, not about to pay $50 for a card I'm probably not even going to play in this deck, to be honest, because I do play a lot of 1-ups, so it's a lot more combo oriented. It's not indicative of playing Pot of Desires. I'm just going to leave it at that. Next up, we have 3 copies of Emergency Call. This helps you get your combo pieces. It's really good discard fodder for Summoner Monk. It's just that it's an extra monster at any given point in time. Obviously, you don't want to be seeing these too much just because of the fact that you don't always want monsters in your hand, but in which case, it's not that bad just to hold on to it just until you need it. So yeah. And next up for the last spell that we are running multiple copies of, we are running 3 copies of Mass Change. Nothing really much to explain about it here. It just changes your heroes into Master Heroes. And it is searchable from Shadow Mist and Master Hero Anki. Now I'll wrap up the spells that we are playing multiple copies of. And on to the 1-ups. There are many 1-ups in this deck. Starting off, we have the 1 Form Change. This card is incredibly clutch. I love this card. I will never drop it from the deck, even though I did used to play 2 for the longest time. I did cut it down to 1 just because it can be a dead draw at times. But however, that's not always a very bad argument, though, just because of the fact that you do play Summoner Monk in the deck, so even if you do draw it, if you have Summoner Monk, you can just pitch it. And it's also searchable from Shadow Mist as well, so you can pretty much always have it live. If you have Mass Change in your hand and you can trigger Shadow Mist, just add this, really. That's just all there is to it, and it's a really good card to get off Anki because it pretty much just expands your horizons infinitely with Anki. And next up for the one of, we got one mass charge. It's pretty self-explanatory. You just add back a change quick play into hero from your graveyard. Next up, a new addition I got from my friend Masterix. 1 day apiece. The thing is, the interaction with this card in Master Heroes is kind of like running Dark Bribe. It's just that you let your opponent draws as well, so you can trigger Dark Law. And the thing is, you draw as well, so it's kind of like an upstart, and neither player takes damage for the next turn, which is really good in your Cosmo matchup, because even though there's only one Dark Destroyer, Cosmo still only really need one Dark Destroyer to kind of just make this deck completely irrelevant. But now that you have this card, you can pretty much just have one more turn to live to find your out, basically. And next up, we have the one Polymerization to add up Blazeman. I did used to play two, but this card is a completely dead card to draw. You never want to open it, and you never want to draw it. And that's really about the only weakness it has. It's really good if you use it. If you use Shadow Mist as a fusion material, though, because it sends it to the graveyard, and you get a free search from Shadow Mist. So yeah. Next up, we got the Run Raigeki. I'm noticing that this card's actually going to the side deck a lot more, but I feel like this card's definitely a main deck staple in Heroes. Just because Raigeki plus Dark Law is just winning, basically. And for the last spell, we are wanting the one Reinforcements of the Army, just to add any of your level 4 or lower heroes. Not heroes, warriors, my bad. It basically, you almost always want to get Goblinberg off of it, but sometimes I find myself going for other things, like Bubble Man, Blaze Man, or Shadow Mist. So yeah, it's a really good card. I really feel like if you're going to be playing Rota, you need to be maxing out as much of it as possible, but it's at 1 at the moment. On to the traps. We're running 3 copies of Call of the Haunted. I feel like for this particular build, my particular build, you need to be running 3 Call of the Haunted. I know for pure Masked Heroes, you can feasibly run 2, but for me, it's just like I want to see this card as turn 1 as much as possible, just because it just puts me ahead so much in the long run. Because like opening Blazeman plus Call of the Haunted is phenomenal. It's a free plus. Get a +1 on your turn. And during your opponent's end phase, you flip this, and you get Shadow Mist from the graveyard, so that's a +1 from the Shadow Mist search, and then you have, get your mass change, you just, yeah, there's just way too much good about it, just to go into it right now. For the next trap we're running 2 copies of Dark Bribe. I did cut it down to 2 for another tech card that you'll see later. I mean, I liked it at 3 a lot, but I feel like 2 is just fine as well. I mean, I still see it enough, but I don't see it too much, though. It's just like, I don't ever want to open with multiple Dark Bribe, though. That's just the thing. Like like at Regionals, how I opened up with triple Dark Bribe and Blazeman Call the Haunted and still won. Just saying, but either way, it's just like, you don't want to ever open with more than 1. It's just like, but this number is just indicative of seeing it enough, though. And next up, for the next trap we're running multiples of, we are running 2 copies of Rivalry of Warlords. I feel like this card is super solid still, even though Monarchs got hit pretty hard. Obviously, this card was like the nuts against Monarchs. It was just like they could not do anything. And like the only thing they could do would be like special summon Red Layer and sack it for Kuraz, and that's all they could do. Or like go Edia and tribute that. Like they could like. Actually, I feel like that's it. Like I think that they could go Edia, sack for Kuraz, but they'd have to. I don't know. They'd have to wait a whole turn just to tribute for Kuraz, just because you wouldn't get that extra tribute summon from Eidos. So yeah, assuming that they even play the Vassals anymore. I don't even think Monarchs really play Vassals other than Mithra. So yeah, obviously they play Edia, but I haven't really been seeing much Eidos. But yeah, that'll wrap up all the traps you're playing multiple copies of. I still feel like Dark Bribe is a really, really good card in Heroes, and I feel like it should always be played. Even if it's just a one-of, you should really just try it out, really. That's all I have to say. And for the one-ofs, there are a lot of one-of traps in this deck right now. We got the one Bottomless Trap Hole. This is probably just the best trap hole right now for just everything, really. It's always going to be a good card. We got one Time Space for spinning back cards that are summoned from the hand in extra deck. We got a new addition here, the one Treacherous Trap Hole. If I had a Treacherous Trap Hole Nightmare, this would be a Treacherous Trap Hole Nightmare. But I figured with decks like PK Fire and Blue Eyes running around, I feel like this card would be very good. The only reason why I mentioned Blue Eyes is because the only way Blue Eyes can feasibly answer a field of Dark Law Rafflesia is if they opened with 2 cards, Maiden and Sage. So they'd have to normal summon their maiden and then activate their Sage in their hand and target the maiden. Obviously, the cost for Sage is to target a monster, so that way Sage still activates and resolves under Dark Law. But the thing is, they're obviously Sage and Maiden both get banished, and they get 2 Blue Eyes from their deck. That would probably be like a Blue Eyes and like the Spirit Blue Eyes. I don't remember what it was. It used to be called Cloud Dragon, but yeah. And that's the case. Like you have 2 choices in that scenario. You can either bottomless it, or you can either bottomless them both because they're technically both being summoned at the same time. Or you can just use Treacherous and to just hit them both. Preferably, I would use Treacherous just because Treacherous isn't always indicative of being live, unlike Bottomless Trapple. But yeah, that's just the thing, though. And for obviously against PK Fire, this card's amazing just because, like, okay, they go any 2 monsters for Exceed, just Treacherous. You know, you don't even need Dark Claw as long as like this card's like an anti Terror Top basically is what it comes down to. And next up, we have the 1 Chaos Trapple. I feel like this card's still a really solid card that should be played in pretty much the main deck of any rogue deck right now. It's going to be so good. It's a Solemn for a Light and Darks that, except going to the graveyard, it just banishes them, which is so amazingly good. Especially considering how the best Tier 1 decks are still going to be primarily Light and Dark. Like, Cosmo are still going to be viable. They're Light and Dark. Blue Eyes are probably going to be the best deck of the format based on how this ban list goes. They're all Light exclusively. Even though Monarchs got hit, this card still hits them a lot. I think Exceed Monarchs could still do decently if they find a new build. Burning Abyss, Phantom Knights, obviously all dark, all light. This card hits them pretty hard, so yeah, stuff like that. You can see why I still run it. And next up, new card, 1 Grand Horn of Heaven. Yeah, I know it's a scrubby common and not a gold secret like the Treacherous, but you know, I work with what I have. But yeah. The reason why I put this into the main deck, much like Dark Bribe, it makes your opponent draw a card so you can trigger Dark Law with it. But the thing is that it's like Black Horn of Heaven. It stops their Exceed plays. So like if you're playing against PK Fire, if they go for their Dante or like their Breaksword to pop Dark Law, you can just activate this, and their Breaksword will die, and then their main phase is over, which means they can't try to get over Dark Law with a different rank 3. So and they draw, so Dark Law will trigger. So it's just a win-win. They lost their main phase. They could still go main phase 2, no doubt, but the thing is though, like they're in main phase 2. Like they can't kill Dark Law and deal damage. So yeah. And next up, the 1 Solemn Warning. There are no Solemn Strikes in here. I don't have the money for that. This is more or less just like a budget version. I think I'm going to title this video as a budget hero deck, so yeah. And lastly, for the last card in the main deck, the 1 Vanity's Emptiness. I feel like this card is amazing right now. I don't see why people don't run it in the main deck as often. I still see it from here to there, but it's just like the meta just seems to be shifting away from this card. I don't know why, because it's so powerful, but yeah, it is what it is. I feel like I've been away from this game for a long time, so I don't exactly know what's what right now. And on to the extra deck. Extra deck has hardly changed at all. I did not change it at all. So yeah, let's just do this real quick. Okay, 1 Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon. This is for primarily Cosmo, but it's really good for any machine deck matchup. Excuse me, people. The reason why I feel like this card is still really good is just because it's an out to the 1 Dark Destroyer, and if you get rid of the 1 Dark Destroyer without triggering it, that's amazing. So yeah, I feel like this card is still something that you should be playing if you have the access to it. I mean, I think if you're trying to play like Glad Beasts now, I feel like this plus 1 Cyber Dragon in the main deck would be really smart. So yeah, it's really good for just getting rid of the 1 Dark Destroyer. If you run into any like rogue machine decks, obviously this card puts in work too. Like if you run into like, I don't know, like Despots. I mean, I did run into a Despot player at regionals. I don't really think but really other than Cosmo, I don't think there are really very many other relevant machine decks at the moment. But yeah, next up we got 1 Master Hero Anki. This card's a low key like MVP of the entire extra deck, just because of the fact that he's amazing in the mirror match. He's amazing against there's a lot of things, like especially in the mirror match though, because it gets over Dark Law and it pretty much turns itself into a Dark Law. No, yeah, he's kind of like a pseudo Heartland Draco. He pokes directly for half damage. He's free plussing obviously because whenever he runs over a monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can add a change quick play from your deck to your hand. He's a 2800 body, so he's not that hard. So he's not that easy to get over, but at the same time, He beats over a lot of things. My bad. So overall, he's just super solid in my opinion. Next up, we got the one copy of Elemental Hero Nova Master, easily my favorite fusion in this extra deck, just because of how amazing he is. Whenever he runs over an opponent's monster by battle, you draw one card. So right off the bat, he's an immediate +2, just because your opponent goes -1 from losing the monster to battle, and you draw off of Nova Master, which is a +1. And the thing is, it doesn't matter where the opponent's monster goes. Like if it's a Pendulum that goes to the extra deck, you still draw. If Darklaw's on the field, the monster is banished, you still draw. It does not matter where it goes, as the card says right here. So it's really amazing with Darklaw. Next up, we got one copy of Master Hero Acid. I feel like one is pretty staple. And you really just want to save it for the right moment. I know that the format's not super back row heavy anymore, and it pretty much hasn't been that way since Twin Twisters has came into the meta, but this card is still really good for a lot of the Pendulum matchups, just because it does hit Pendulum scales as well. So yeah, it's still something you want to run as a one of. And next up, we got the one Ab-Zero. This card is still really good. Every regional I went to, this card has always proved its worth to me, which was why I'll always run it. Even though Mermail are still a thing, there aren't very many water decks that are relevant right now enough to really justify running more than one Ab-Zero. And either way, it's just like making Nova Masters pretty much better in all situations. Although one thing I will say is though is that Abyss Dweller plus Ab-Zero is an absolutely devastating field for Cosmo, just because like this Ab-Zero will be a 35 beater if you're using Abyss Dweller correctly. Like if you have a Bubble Man under the Abyss Dweller, and Ab-Zero will be beefed up just from Dweller being on the field, but if Dweller has a Bubble Man underneath it, Ab-Zero will be boosted by another 500, which will make Ab-Zero just beefy as all hell. So yeah, so that's a really devastating field for Cosmo to deal with, especially now that there's only one Dark Destroyer. And just, yeah, like this field is now going to be super potent. This field will now be super potent. So yeah, definitely something to look forward to if I ever do run into Cosmo, just making Ab-Zero Dweller. So yeah, and next up we got one copy of Koga. I feel like he's a lot better now that there's only one Dark Destroyer as well, just because of the fact that he's a lot harder to get over now. For Cosmo, really the only way to get over him is by point-for-pointing with him, or just having Dark Destroyer and popping it. But now, obviously, like I said, one Dark Destroyer, good luck. So yeah. And for lastly, the last two fusions, we have obviously the two copies of Darklaw. This is your main win condition for the deck. Just, no graveyard, no searching. Good luck doing anything. So yeah, I mean, obviously, there's nothing to say about him. He's absolutely phenomenal, even over a year after he's been released. There's just nothing. This card isn't fair. Like, let's just be honest here. Like, this card is not fair. Like, how is this? It's just like, how has this card not been hit on the ban list? I mean, obviously, like in the OCG, like they hit cards like Mass Change 2 and Shadow Mist, just because like they're tired of seeing Burning Abyss make Darklaw. They're tired of just seeing heroes everywhere. But yeah, it was just like, what is this card, Konami? Like, why is this card like immune to power creep now? Like, what is this Ophion 2.0? So yeah, that'll wrap up the fusions at I believe 8, and on to the Exceeds. These Exceeds are highly outdated. Like, I need to get a Utopia the Lightning in here and other things, just because, like, this extra deck is, this is an extra deck that you'd, besides Rafflesia, like, this is an extra deck you'd see, like, a year ago. Like, no joke. Okay, so starting off, we got the one Dark Rebellion Exceed Dragon. Well, every time I go to an event, he proves his worth. Like, he is a clutch card, which is why I'm still even bothering to run him. And, yeah. Number 103, Ragna Zero. This card is very good on paper in conjunction with the deck, thanks to cards like Acid and Koga. And just being able to manipulate your opponent's monster stats with those two cards, and then just being able to pop them with Ragna Zero is really good, especially if there's a Shadow Mist under the Ragna Zero you can trigger. So yeah. Alright, next up, number 101, Silent Honor Arc. Obviously, like I mentioned in previous deck profiles, I did 101 in Ignister at Regionals, and it was super sexy, so he has his utility. I really like running him. I know that pretty much that none of the meta plays him anymore. He's pretty much just largely replaced by Castel. But yeah, I would still play him, but that's up to you, really, whether or not you like 101 or not. Next up, another really old as fuck outdated card, Heroic Champion Excalibur. Hooray! This obviously should be Utopia the Lightning, but this is a budget profile, and I don't have access to Utopia the Lightning, unfortunately, so yeah. Obviously, he's real, and even in certain circumstances, he's better than Utopia the Lightning because he's free damage. Just because Well, for Utopia, for the Lightning, you can only really get the extra damage when your opponent has a monster on board. That's the only way you can beef up Utopia the Lightning. But with Excalibur, it's just 4,000 always. So in certain circumstances, like if you're like attacking directly for game, like he's even better than Utopia the Lightning, just because he's an even bigger body. But yeah, onto the rest of the Xyz. We have the one Castel staple, the one Abyss Dweller, pretty staple as well. I know that people are actually playing two Dweller now for Cosmo, but I really only have room for one Dweller. Sad but true, especially considering how I have Bubble Man, so you can even use him even more effectively than most decks, because you can put a water underneath him pretty easily. And for the last XC, the most bread and butter XC of the entire extra deck for me, Trap-Trickster Flasia. We're running 3 viable targets, and we also have more viable targets in my side deck for it. So yeah, obviously this plus Dark Claw is always your most ideal starting field, just because it pretty much means that your opponent can't play Yu-Gi-Oh! So yeah, that's it for the extra deck. I feel like I need to update this a lot though. Like I need to get Utopia the Lightning in there, and I kind of just need to look around and see what other hero players are playing in their extra deck. I know that a lot of them are playing Gaga Samurai, and I know it's a cheap card, but I just don't have the money to go on TCG Play right now and buy stuff. So yeah, sad but true. And on to the side deck. I know this video is a little bit longer, is on the longer side, so I need to kind of hurry up the side deck. Starting off, we got the one Cyber Dragon and the one Elemental Hero Prisma. The only reason why I'd even bother playing for the Fortress Dragon engine is because of how good Prisma is in this deck, just because of the fact that it synergizes pretty well, if not perfectly. Like, if you're running into a machine deck, you just swap out the Neos Alias for Prisma, and then just find room to put the Cyber Dragon in. It's as simple as that. It's really good. It's a one-card engine, basically, if you can fit the Cyber Dragon in. And obviously against like Demise decks, like you probably need a neck. I put in Prisma anyway. Probably put in Prisma and Cyber Dragon anyway, just so I have a large body just to beat over things like the Cleaforts, or like if it's like Barrier Statue Stun, for God's sake. Like I hate that deck so much. Oh my god. Just having an extra monster just to beat over the barriers just so you can play Yu-Gi-Oh! Is incredibly important. So yeah. Moving on, we got one system down. Before Dark Destroyer got limited, I felt like I needed more system downs, but now that Dark Destroyer isn't one, I don't feel like I need more than one system down. I do not need more than one system down now, thank God. But yeah, we got 2 copies of Dark Hole. And I feel like this card is really good, especially now that Kirin and Dark Destroyer are hit now, just because more cards are more susceptible to destruction now. So yeah. It's just, and also like this is a very good card for going second, especially considering how there are decks like Blue Eyes in the mix now, which are very susceptible to destruction. And obviously like Mermail, if they make you go second, I always side Dark Hole for Mermail, because they always make heroes go second, because otherwise they can't play Yu-Gi-Oh! At all. So yeah, and even against what else? Against like Monarchs, it was really good because I don't think you see Monarchs even played March. So yeah, yeah. And next up, we got 2 Twin Twisters. I don't feel like you really need to play more than 2, to be honest, just because I feel like it's just good enough at 2. So yeah, and for the traps, we got the second time space for obviously matchups that are more indicative of having the time space, like Cosmo. Let's see. Yeah, pretty much Cosmo. Pendulums. Oh yeah, pendulums like Metal Foes. This would be really good against them. If you ever see like any kind of remnants of like Performa Pals or Pendulum Magicians, obviously really good against them. Magispectors, like pure Magispectors. And this card's amazing against because it pretty much bypasses the whole deck. So yeah, stuff like that. This is why I'm still running that second time space in my side deck. 2 Chain Disappearance. This card I think is stellar against Blue Eyes and PK Fire, just because if you hit Sage with this, you're in a really good spot. If you hit Maiden with this, you're still kind of in a good spot. If you hit Farfo with this, you're in a really good spot. Other than that, it's just like you can also hit Dante with it, even though you can't really banish the other Dantes from the extra deck because of the way the card is ruled. You still can just 1-for-1 the Dante and banish it, which is still very good. And next up, we got the 2 Breakthrough skill. These would be Solemn Strikes if I had them, but I don't have Solemn Strikes. And I feel like in certain cases, this is even better than Solemn Strike, especially against a deck like Blue Eyes, in my opinion, where it's just like, okay, like they have their Spirit Synchro out, and like you send a Shadow Mist to the graveyard, and then you trigger it, and they're going to probably chain their Spirit Dragon to negate it. If this card's in your graveyard, obviously just banish it, and then target the Blue Eyes. Spirit Dragon, and I think if I recall correctly, the way this card was ruled, even if Spirit Dragon chains its effect to attribute itself to special summon another Light Dragon from their extra deck, this will still negate it, and it'll probably even negate the effect to actually summon the Light Dragon from their extra deck, just because of the way it's ruled. I'll have to check it, but I think it still negates the effects even if they leave the field. It's like how lose one turn used to be worded. So yeah, and for the last card in the side deck, 3 Iron Wall. I still go really hard in for Cosmo. And realistically, even though it is my worst matchup, it's slightly better. But I still feel like this card will single-handedly shut down like the most viable build of Cosmo now, which would be Fire King Cosmo. Just flip Iron Wall and then you win. Like, unless they have the Slip Rider and the Call of the Haunted to deal with it, or if they have like the teleport to tribute for Slip Rider, you know, like Slip Rider is the only thing that outs this, and chances are they're not going to have two. I don't think do Fire King Cosmos even main deck Twin Twisters. I'm pretty sure that some do, but some don't. I don't know. It really just depends. Let me know if they do, or if you know a person who does. But yeah, that's irrelevant. So yeah, that's the deck profile, guys. Tell me what you guys think, because I'm really liking this this build right now. It's I feel like it is definitely competitively viable, even without the more expensive cards like the Solemn Strikes and Utopia of the Lightning and the Pot of Desires. I still feel like this card. I feel like this deck can definitely compete in the meta. It can definitely go far in a regional, because last time I took a deck, which wasn't very different from this one, to regionals, I got 80th place. And that was, I was actually pretty fresh on Yu-Gi-Oh! I hadn't been playing for a while, and I went back in, like, only a few days of, like, just warming back up. Like, hell, I even put Dark Bribes in the deck the day before, and I did well. So, yeah. Tell me what you guys think of the deck profile. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next video.